Well, welcome everybody. Today we're going to have a discussion around many things related to not-for-profits, and hopefully there'll be some new information. I see we got a couple of nonprofit guys here with us, and I think this is in the category of sharing information and identifying a few different resources, and we might branch off into another actual call specifically for not-for-profits as a follow-up to this session. But we wanted to scratch the surface today and talk about a few things that are available and just kind of do an intro, if you will. Joining me today as the other monkey grinder here is Mr. Wonderful, Mr. John Anderson. John Anderson, who
kind of floating in the middle of nowhere there.
That's right. We lovingly refer to John as Obi John Kenobi, the all-seeing, all-knowing, all-wise one here. From a technology perspective, he's a true Renaissance man. He knows a lot about a little, or a little about a lot, depending on which way you want to go with that.
There you go.
But John is a veritable fountain of information. And to be honest, frank, and truthful, he's got more skills than Napoleon Dynamite. Oh, that was a pretty good line there.
That was awesome.
John, why don't you, for those who don't know you, that may have been living under a rock for the last 20 years, but no, for John, for those who don't know you or haven't met you, why don't you give us just a little bit of who you are, what you do in the NetVPro environment, just go over misdemeanors, not felonies, and then we can jump into stuff a little bit, but talk a little bit about just who you are and feather that into the role you have here, and they'll understand why you and I are talking together, I think.
Well, I started off in the telco industry, or the telco segment of the business, and worked for US West, which is the telco up here, for 10 years. Followed that up with working for a few different companies doing network installation, troubleshooting, phone system installation and troubleshooting, just general. I was the guy that when the other guys went on site somewhere and broke something, it was my job to fix it. So I just pretty much ran around in a van all day by myself and fixed things.
Remember, misdemeanors, not felonies.
Right.
Was it a white windowless van, Jen?
It was, in fact. It had a refrigerator in there. It had a 24 pack of dew in there, man. Got lunch. I'm ready to roll.
You could chill pop.
Oh yeah, nothing to it. Then I got into the IT world when I wrecked my knee and needed to find somewhere where I wouldn't need to be climbing on ladders so very much. So and ended up working for Paul. I went to work for another company. Paul bought that company. I ended up working for Paul. He moved on to concentrate on NetVPro, and then I came to work for him a couple of years down the road. Been here ever since. And my job here is pretty much jack of all trades, mentor of new guys, researcher of issues, just generally gopher. Paul tells me what to do, I do it.
And when we have two things to actually point out there, one is that you actually work for Paul in two different businesses.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and
so
he hired me the second time.
I say, so you're a glutton for punishment. We've learned that already. Right. And then part of what you do at NetVPro is you help us handle licensing, right? You work with our vendors and you do a lot with licensing.
Yeah, that's a big part of my tracking the licenses and making sure they get renewed on time, that kind of thing.
So, I mean, so today, relative to licensing and stuff, we're going to talk a little bit about not-for-profits. So do you have kind of an overview on what you would consider to be a not-for-profit?
Well, the what you got on the screen is pretty good. It speaks to what it is. They serve the public. They're tax exempt. That's the legal piece of the puzzle, and they're non-political. Although in this day and age, religion would maybe count as politics.
Right.
in the current climate. But yeah, they're mission driven. They report not to shareholders, but to the employees and the people they serve as their target.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things you'll find is the concept of being mission driven. Mission driven versus profit driven. It's a different mindset. Of late, I had occasion to know somebody who was a CFO in a profit driven organization who just took on a position as a CFO in a not-for-profit organization. And it's interesting listening to that person articulate the difference in working for a mission-driven organization. And the people who are there are more, I shouldn't say more, but they're human focused. They're really focused on a lot things that are somewhat different than what you might encounter in the hardcore business space. So the not-for-profit area is special. There's a lot of things going on there. There's special missions, but with that, there's also special needs and special demands that come up, and part of what we wanted to talk about today is helping with some of those needs and controlling things like costs, because while a business goes out and generates revenue through sales and those types of things, many times with a not-for-profit, those revenues or those monies they need to run their business are gathered through donations and fundraising and those types of activities. And that kind of produces some unique challenges on them. This is not an exhaustive list or an exhaustive research or delve into the not-for-profits, but we wanted to bring a few different resources forward for us to talk about. And one of those resources is Microsoft. Everybody's heard of Microsoft. Microsoft's the big evil M that's out there in existence, and they do more than just release patches that drive us crazy and newer versions of Windows. They have programs for not-for-profits and which many times people don't even contemplate being able to use Microsoft for reduced rates in a not-for-profit space. So maybe you can give us a little bit about some of the eligibility requirements, or if there's a program. Like, I think Microsoft kind of has a thing that you can participate in, and maybe we can talk a little bit about eligibility requirements and some of those pieces of it. I can chime in a little bit, but
well, the big eligibility requirement for Microsoft and the other company we're going to discuss is the 501c3 status in the U.S. And that, yeah, I've been through it once. It was kind of ugly, but it wasn't that bad.
It can be a challenge. It can be a challenge
for somebody that doesn't, do that kind of stuff.
Well, and a lot of times that reveal the truth about myself, because I do like to talk about myself, as the people here would know. But I was actually president of not-for-profit, a 501c3 hockey association. But many times with a not-for-profit, people who are involved, that may or may not be their main focus, their main job. So yeah, gathering those pieces of information are important, but they can be a little bit onerous.
Right. So I didn't get into exactly what all the eligibility requirements are for Microsoft, but I did spot that a 501c3 was the kind of the main piece that they work around.
Yeah.
So yeah,
they'll look at that, and I think they actually have a form that you fill out, and then they do an assessment. I know of one partner who actually was rejected, who had to go back because of some status or some sponsorship. So it isn't quite falling off a stump. So you do have to sharpen your pencil a little bit, but once you get it going, they actually were approved. So.
All right. Well, for the Office 365 piece, Microsoft has some offerings, and for the Office 365 piece, I'm just looking at that. You get, if you qualify, and a lot of people do, you'll get 10 free Microsoft Business Premium licenses, which includes The Office suite, like the full Office suite, so you get PowerPoint and Access in the works, and Teams, OneDrive, some SharePoint access. It's kind of the big package. You get 10 of those for free, and additional ones cost you $5 a month. So it's a normally a $20 a month commitment.
Right.
Was it 12 or $12.50? Anyways, it's a big.
It depends
big
on, yeah, which one. 1250 on the low end. I think the 20 is the Azure, the cloud.
Yeah, Azure
Yep.
piece.
Yep.
So, and then there's Power Apps,
Mhm.
which is basically it's a cloud, provides rapid development to build custom apps. So if you're trying to do something specific with an app, and or even your website,
Process flows, those types of things. If you have a workflow you need to do, that
right,
is done through Power Apps.
right. And then and you get 10 of those, and additional licenses are $250 a month. And then there's the Dynamics 365 piece, which is basically a CRM and an ERP wrapped into one, all in the cloud. And you get 5 of those for 5 licenses for that for free.
And to me, when we think about this, it makes me feel like it's like a business enablement package, right? They take those things that is core to a business, and they offer them and make them available at a reduced rate. And if you're a business of small enough size, it sounds like you can get cranking for next to nothing, right? If you have few enough licenses. So if you're a church or some kind of, like I said, a hockey association, some kind of association like that, it's pretty powerful to be able to get these things and not have to go out and pay for them.
Right, and
And
they're
if you're
enterprise class tools, and they're giving them away.
right,
That's
and if you're a larger enterprise class business, having access to these things for single digit dollars is significantly better than the $20 rate or the $12.50 that you'd see other places. So it is and can represent quite a savings. So Microsoft is one of the entities that we work with. Another one is Techsoup. Now Techsoup is a little bit, notice how I did that, a horse of a different color, right? See a different color. See what I did there with that? That's called creativity. Anyway, so they're a bit of a horse of a different color. Why don't you talk about Techsoup a little bit and what they got going on?
Well, Techsoup does a lot of things with a lot of companies. They've got, I don't remember how many, 500 products. Techsoup's marketplace has over 500 products from over 100 companies. So they deal with hardware, software, help desk services, training. They do a lot of webinars. They have some cloud services. They even do some hardware and recycling stuff. They have a lot of local partners.
Right. When I think of Microsoft, that's kind of product or single point solution based. When I think of Techsoup, I almost think of it like a clearinghouse. Like this is a one-stop shop for many different solutions, because you can go to Techsoup, for example, and find your Microsoft solutions, but then you can also go there and find your Adobe solutions and other software tools that are name brand and might be needed by your business. But that Techsoup integration kind of takes it to the next level, where they also have things like help desk capabilities, which we don't really want to talk about here.
Right. Well, another piece of the puzzle is that Techsoup, in my experience, has kind of been overwhelming for users because there's just so much there. It's hard to kind of get your arms around all of it at once. So they do have some consulting services that are helpful, but it's really good if you have a full-time person that's your kind of your IT guy kind of in your corner working for you. And I think that's where we come into play, because we can provide that assistance that you need.
Right. Maybe we flip back and forth between these, because great segue into NetVPro and some of the things we do there. course, the capitalization is off on these. I don't know who in the world did these slides, but anyway, but that said, one of the things like we talked about with Techsoup that can be overwhelming is when you get into the things like help desk training, cloud services, some of those things that are more human related. So when you start thinking about leveraging those types of services, you may be better off to have a service provider like NetVPro. And I don't know, John, if you have anything to comment on that.
I do. Larger companies, and I'll include TechSoup in this, have a tendency, you have a tendency to kind of be lost, especially for the help desk side, because they're just relying on notes they have. Think about calling Dell support sometime and try to get answers from them. It's difficult because they're working off of, a checklist, and they don't really know you, and they don't know your environment. And that's kind of where NetVPro really shines, because we take a personal interest in our clients. I see something coming in from a client, I can almost tell what's going on just based off of the limited information I get in an email. And I already have a good idea what the solution is by the time I pick up the phone and call them, which we do. We call people. We don't just operate off of email like, or some support forum like some companies do.
I think that one of the things in my experience is when we think about TechSoup, they're very strong, probably in the software space.
That's their biggest chunk
very
of the
strong
puzzle. Yeah.
Right. And I actually have another slide in here to talk about hardware a little bit later. So hardware and software are probably where they do a lot of stuff. Help desk is a capability they offer. Might be a little bit of a challenge because of being in far-flung locations, right? And not really knowing, but something is better than nothing. I think another space is training is a great resource for them to be able to provide and help people with generalized, things like Office 365 training and security, those types of things. They have an inventory of different training services available. And these other things are there and available, but are not necessarily sweet spots for them.
Right.
Where by contrast, if you think about an organization, it's an MSP, the help desk stuff is provided, like you said, there's a tighter integration with your business, but the secret sauce really is in when we think about this technology evaluation and planning and understanding what the needs are for your business, because the needs for one business of the same type, and I'll just use maybe Big Brothers Big Sisters as an example. That's a well-known not-for-profit, and an organization in Duluth, Minnesota might have a different need than an organization in Dallas, Texas. So having those conversations and understanding what that technology roadmap is going to look like will likely get you working with an MSP or an organization similar to NetVPro is much more likely to get you what you need for your business, in my opinion. The other piece of that is guidance on procurement and setup, because depending on what you have going on in your space, I mean, you could be a not-for-profit who has HIPAA data, or you could be a not-for-profit that has PCI data. So if you have specialized needs, it probably isn't a bad idea to align yourself with a partner who can help you with a procurement strategy. Because as we think about it and we go through this and we see that places like Techsoup have things available, there's also places you can go to get refurbished hardware, right? We'll talk a little bit about that, but from a security standards, those types of things, it is likely good to work with a partner who can help you understand where it doesn't matter, or it's a good idea to get a refurbished piece of equipment, and where you might want to have something that's new or state of the art. So it's probably a mixed bag.
With refurbished hardware, I was just reading a couple of days ago about an article about a new type of malware it's been around for a little while, but it hasn't been very popular, where it actually sticks the malware into your BIOS, which is really kind of scary, because now you can replace your hard drive, reformat your hard drive, and you still have the virus.
If they stick malware in your BIOS, can you feel that?
Not really.
Does it
And there's
itch?
the problem. It,
I had a
itch, but you can't scratch.
malware. I had malware in my BIOS once, and I had to go to the doctor and get them burn that off.
Yeah, there's a cream for that, I'm
The
sure.
cream, yeah, you get malware eosis.
Yeah. But so if you are buying refurbished equipment, don't get it from Jack down the street
Yeah,
because you don't know what you're getting.
I
It's
think
not been properly checked.
that's actually a good point. When when you are working with and getting refurbished gear, you likely want to go to a known large um, uh, practitioner in the art, if you will. You probably don't want to meet Stan, who's got the plan in the tan van where you got to go knock on the door 3 times.
Yeah,
You know,
Craigslist is not the place to go for
yeah.
refurbished.
So there are large national retailers who do refurbished hardware that are perfectly acceptable. They bring this gear in, they clean it up, right? They clean it, disinfect it, they make sure everything's working. We ourselves have some partnerships with some large retailers. They engineer and certify things like drives. They make sure there's no errors, those types of things. So the piece of equipment you're getting, it's kind of like a certified used car, right? Certified pre-owned used car,
Yeah,
right? And you get that,
NetVPro fax or Carfax or
right?
whatever.
Yeah, I like that NetVPro fax.
There you
But
go.
you have some assurance that this product has been gone through and it meets some standards and those types of things. So I think when you're thinking about refurbished hardware, there's kind of like, I think about it in 3 different ways. I think about it in servers and storage. Again, you can get that equipment for what I would say is a much lower price point. You can get same to similar performance for that price point. And like those things are already burned in general, those pieces of equipment. And a lot of times, if you're going to have a problem, you're going to have the problem right away, right? They're going to die off the shelf or something. These pieces have been used and we know that they've been burned in. Kind of a known quantity a little bit. When we start thinking about the next class that I consider, workstations and laptops, again, we can get a much better price point. You can commonly compare a $1,500 or $1,800 laptop, or even nowadays with the shortages, a $2,200 laptop for a device that might be $400. And if you're a not-for-profit and sometime go out and try to fundraise $800, right? It's meaningful. So if you can get the same to similar performance for a lower cost, a much lower cost, it's something to deeply consider. The other piece, and that you probably see I have on there, is that you can put lipstick on it. Now that's not literal, but what I mean by that is that you can get that lower cost device. Maybe you're able to find an i7 machine that has 4 gigs of RAM and a mechanical hard drive, right? And maybe you get that for $250. All right, well, that might not be the person you want to take to prom, but if you put a little lipstick on it by way of added RAM and an SSD drive, now all of a sudden, it's looking pretty good. I might go on a date with that one.
Yeah,
So
went from a Yugo to
yeah,
something
to
a little better.
a Oldsmobile or a
Right,
Buick.
right.
It's not a Porsche, but I'll take a Buick.
Why not?
But that's the thing, is that you have the ability to take that device that maybe isn't 100% what you want, and for a minimal investment, you can make it into something that works well for your enterprise, right? And for the people, because when you think about a not-for-profit, people need to do the same, Word documents, Excel documents, all the things that everybody else is trying to do. But this gives you the ability to have that functionality, that capability for a lesser spend. Now, I will say, and the next column or the next item we think about is network equipment. I think network equipment is a good alternative in the used market because you can, a switch is a switch, ones and zeros move through wires. I think the one thing that draws pause a little bit for me in this space is just the security elements of it, and making sure that piece of equipment you buy is patched or patchable and upgradable and supported. So
Right, the supported is a big piece. It's huge.
right. So when we're thinking about network gear, a lot of times that's where I'll kind of take a look at it and say, well, what's the role? What are the requirements? And maybe in a network space, I mean, we might want to have newer equipment on a perimeter or someplace that's going to be serving a protective role, a prophylactic role, if you will. I think I get a double word score and extra points for using prophylactic in an acceptable way on a call. That's pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good actually. In a security role, and then maybe you have kind of like a Tootsie Pop, the soft chewy center with other equipment, but you want to have that protection on the exterior. Would you have any thoughts about that?
I'm right there with you. Yeah, Ken might be able to
I
speak
would
a
say,
little
how
bit
about our
more.
esteemed panel? Ken, Mr. Romer, being the security professional he is, do you have any thoughts on that? Ken, have you ever had any fears about refurbished network equipment?
Yeah, I would. I mean, again, if you're looking at things that are going to get in the BIOS or the firmware, you really need to be careful and get it from a reliable source who you know has already wiped that out of the and reloaded it, so reflashed it, so to speak.
Yep.
I
I
would
think
be.
that I think I like that. I like that phraseology used there. A reliable source.
Yes.
I think that's an important thing. It's hard if you have a business that has security concerns or requirements. You just, from my perspective, you don't want to go to a garage sale and buy networking equipment. I don't feel comfortable with that. I feel comfortable with refurbished network equipment, but again, from that reliable source and of a certain amount of recency. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, one thing, there's been issues with, and it's mostly surrounding IoT, but it's pretty much the same kind of stuff, where people are buying locks and things like that off of Craigslist or some other site like that. And what happens is that lock was originally used to open and close someone's door, but when they sold the lock, it never lost connection to where that lock was located. So they still have access to get into the lock, whoever had it before. It also was kind enough to have a GPS feature so they would know exactly where it is. Kind of goes hand in hand with that stuff.
Oh,
Wow. Yeah, well, I think that lends to the fact that with the added layer of IoT, there's just more stuff to think about. And then I think the last thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is recycling and what to do, because I don't know that I've been to a customer of size that doesn't have a stack of stuff someplace that they don't really know what to do with. And I think that there are options there. One of the options is that, if you work with NetVPro, we're willing to help out with that electronic recycling stuff. We can help that primarily in the not-for-profit space. We don't do, like, if you're Toyota Motor Finance, for example, we probably will be challenged to take pallets and pallets of stuff out of your environment. But if you're, Holy Mother of the Blessed Day Church, and I made that up out the top of my head, so that's pretty good too. But if you're that organization, and you got a couple laptops, we definitely can help you out with that. And we want to help out with those things. So we have resources. And another source for how to recycling is what I call reclamation vendors. And you can feel free to correct me if that's the wrong terminology, but that's the way I describe them. So these are organizations or places that take all types of electronic gear, right? They'll take servers, network stuff, laptops, CRTs, they'll take those things.
they'll take
And
almost pretty much any electronics.
yeah, and a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times they'll have a grinder right on site. or a crusher right on site. And what they do is they'll take that unwanted gear, if there's not value to it, and they'll grind it up in a little tiny pieces, and they'll harvest the valuable components off that, the metals, mostly golds and the metal contacts. So they'll harvest those, what I would say is probably non-ferrous metals, off of the electronic devices. So typically those types of places don't charge you to take that equipment. They'll just take it and like I said, grind it up and do it for themselves. If you are doing things like drives or any kind of storage, those types of things, I think you want to be sensitive to documenting that and getting a certificate of disposal from the organizations, just like you would from an e-recycler. But I think sometimes it becomes easy to take a pallet of junk and throw it on a loading dock, and then they grind it up and you kind of walk away pleased with yourself that you've gotten rid of that stuff. But on the other hand, you do need to document that especially for things that are covered, HIPAA covered or PCI, you want to document that those things were destroyed by serial number, and they should be able to easily do that and give you I call it a death certificate, but certificate of destruction for those things. And then we have their e-recyclers. So many recyclers will take electronic products, laptops, monitors, those types of things, and typically they'll have you weigh those, and then you have to pay a rate to dispose of them. So those types of retailers, while or recyclers, while we want to recycle things, they will charge you to do that. So you want to be aware of the difference between what I call the reclamation vendors and the e-recyclers, because there's a cost factor there. I don't know. John, have you ever run into any other ones, or is that kind of?
I can think of one other company that does things. They're out of St. Paul, and they hire predominantly vets, and they get things in. People donate stuff to them. Companies donate stuff to them. They either repair it and resell it as a recycled unit, or they tear it down and do the reclamation piece to it.
Yep.
And they have a couple of locations around town, and I've worked with them in the past, and they do a good job.
Yep. And there are those throughout the country, and I think that, again, the important thing with something like that is to make sure that they're giving you a certificate of destruction on those things.
And they do, and there's a EPA certification involved, and it basically guarantees that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with that stuff.
Right.
And so that's a good thing to check into, whether or not it's being properly recycled.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, with that said, I think that's the end of my information. Does anybody have any questions or any additional comments that they'd like to bring forward? Hearing none, I'd like to ask Piper, do we have the wheel of fun and enjoyment?
Of course.
Wheel of shame.
The wheel of, well, that's right. I like that. Nope, we got vetoed. The wheel of happiness and sunshine and unicorns and bunnies. So do you have that? Yeah, oh, I like that. The wheel of sandwiches. That's pretty good. So if we want to queue up the wheel of sandwiches.
Can you see the wheel of sandwiches?
Let's see.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Drum roll, please.
Round and round she goes. Who's Pac-Man today? Oh my gosh, Denny again. Denny is actually entering. Oh, that's a lot of clapping there. Everybody's happy. Denny is actually entering Raj level territory now. He's won a few of these. I mean, I think we fed Denny's family for the last month. Possibly. He's gonna have 30 feet of subs.
You get the party tray.
Yeah, he's gonna get the party tray. Congratulations, Denny. Thank you for attending
Thank you.
and yeah, it's awesome. We're gonna have to, I see now with the Wheel of Fun and Unicorns that you can actually adjust the space sizes. So we're gonna have to give Denny a little tiny sliver now if he keeps winning like that. We have to skew the deck a little bit. But all right, very good. Anything else before we adjourn for the day?
Thank you.
No.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you very much. It's good to see you, and take care. Stay warm.
Great job, you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.